Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber, and my co-host, Mark Schaffner, is on a business trip back east to take care of some insurance issues. He'll be gone all week, so it'll be me solo for today, Tuesday, Wednesday, tomorrow, Roadster podcast, and the EV podcast Thursday, all at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The picture behind us here is... again, AI generated. But you know what's unusual about this picture? This is the first time that I have been working with AI where it actually accurately rendered the name of something in the image. You try as you may, you can say, I want to see, orange or some other letters in the AI image, and it always botches it. But this one, it put Tesla onto those superchargers. And I don't know whether AI is learning and getting smarter or whether it was just a fluke. But anyway, there's so much talk about the North American charging standard, which we'll get into in this podcast in a little bit here as well, that I thought this might be an appropriate picture, is showing somebody's really cool garage with 2 superchargers. And of course, this is not realistic because, first of all, people don't put superchargers in their homes. That's a big DC power supply, and you only need one typically. So again, thank you for joining us. Feel free to ask questions. We like to see where you're coming in from, and we'll do our best to entertain them as they come in. Richard has joined us today. We've got our social media team is actually whittled down by 66%. 2 of the guys were gone. And Richard has taken a break from his child-rearing duties, which just started, a week or 2 ago. And he'll be joining me here shortly for one of the topics that we'll be covering, so you'll get to see Richard as well. So one of the first things that I have for you is it's a news item. It looks like the Aussies are switching to electric vehicles in increasing numbers. The Tesla Model Y now is the 3rd most sold car in the country as of last month, and a huge number of motorists are planning to make the switch. So it looks like the Australians are beginning to jump on board with electric vehicles. The article says, sales of electric vehicles surge in Australia. We have one of our customers just bought a Tesla Roadster in Australia, and there are very few of them there. These are right-hand drive vehicles. It's one of those countries where they drive on the wrong side of the road, and I don't mind saying that. But he was able to find one there that was right-hand drive, and he's going to be enjoying it here shortly. It's a Fusion Red Roadster. So I don't see any questions streaming in yet, guys. We're good? Okay. I just want to make sure there's nothing wrong. So Inside EVs had an article, and they pointed out that General Motors is actually planning on efficiently using their existing factory and plant footprint. No plans to build new facilities or close existing ones. You know, we were all speculating how difficult would it be for an incumbent ICE vehicle manufacturer to switch over into electric vehicles. And we were watching carefully to see how GM and Ford were able to accommodate the switch. But according to the article, GM, it says, has no plans to build an all-new factory for electric vehicles. They claim that they're going to just efficiently use the existing footprint and use existing tools, equipment, and assembly lines. So it'll be interesting to see how, you know, you can get ICE vehicles and EVs being produced in the same facility. It's got to require different tooling, different levels of expertise, and so that I thought was an interesting article. And in a Teslarati article, there is another Tesla factory that's under discussion now. Now, if you remember, we were all surprised after Shanghai that Tesla announced a large plant. In fact, this will be the largest one that will in existence so far in Monterrey, Mexico. And it turns out that shortly after that, Elon went to India and began talking to the Indian government about a gigafactory in India. We thought, wow, that happened quickly. We haven't even quite broken ground yet on Mexico. It looks like they have some really aggressive growth plans. And lo and behold, a couple weeks later, we now have an announcement that Tesla is reportedly negotiating its next gigafactory location in Spain. So we'll have 2 in Europe. And the details on that one are it's in a very advanced negotiation, is the way that it's worded, for a $4.8 billion gigafactory in Spain. And it will be massive, they're claiming. It doesn't say how it compares in size to the other gigafactories that they have. So I'm feeling kind of lonely here. We've got 0 questions. You sure there's nothing wrong, right? Okay.
Not that I can tell. No, there isn't. We've got viewers and whatnot. Just no questions just yet.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, make me feel a little bit better here. Ask me anything then today, except the sunglass question. I can't answer that. So it looks like Toyota has lost their position for having the world's best-selling vehicle as of Q1 of 2023. The Tesla Model Y actually eclipsed the sales of the Toyota Corolla, which had traditionally been the world's best-selling vehicle. So that was in Q1 of this year. And I think Richard might have a additional news item for us. And I'm going to ask him to join me here since I have an empty co-host desk here.
Sure. I'm going to run right over.
By the way, the rest of this article, and I'll share this with you, this was from Tesla Owners New York State, and it was a comment by one of the participants of that group. He said, it was only a matter of time. Toyota is still a powerhouse, but they also have their heads where the sun doesn't shine with their attitude against EVs. It's ironic, considering their history with the Prius. Well, actually, that's why I brought Richard over. Apparently, Toyota is warming up to EVs, and he's got a news item for us.
Yeah, they are. So on the just a few days ago, Toyota announced that they have a, quote, breakthrough with solid-state batteries. So the old issue or the question or quarrel of durability with the solid-state batteries, they're claiming that they have a solve for it, which is massive news. So they are putting into production a battery, or they're shooting for production of a solid-state battery around 2027 or 2028. In that same announcement, they stated that they are going to be pivoting towards an LFP battery with upwards to 600 plus miles of range. So it looks like they're pivoting, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember Toyota, the former CEO, he was very hesitant with EVs, and there was a, quote, slow pivot that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Now with the new CEO coming in, it seems like they're changing it.
So this is going to be an LFP battery, lithium iron
LFP,
phosphate.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, did I say LIP?
Yeah, well, that's okay. Interesting acronym for a battery, I guess. Lithium ion, but anyway.
Yeah.
So LFP, and is there a vehicle that this is slated for within their lineup?
They don't have anything. There was nothing on the article that I saw for specifics with that battery. All that was stated was, quote, on the higher end.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have upwards of 600 plus miles.
Okay. All right. Very cool. So Richard just had his first daughter, his first child, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Sierra May. How old is she now?
She's a week and a day.
A week and a day. Okay.
Yep.
Is she sleeping all night yet?
She's getting there. You know,
Okay.
last night was a little rough. There's, my reason for sunglasses today is the bags under my eyes. But she, not last night, but the night before, she slept for 5 hours and then woke up in the middle of the night at 8, was up for about an hour, slept for another 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my family over the weekend. I was like, I feel like I'm cheating at being a newborn dad. I get to
Mm-hmm.
sleep. It's so weird.
It is, yes. And it depends on your wife, too. I remember I've been fortunate with my two wives that they've allowed me some, or they were lenient
Mm,
about the amount of
yeah.
caretaking I needed to do, you know. Although I did pitch in, you know, the diapers and all of that and the
Hmm.
bottles and all that stuff. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's great news that Toyota may be warming up to this and finally getting into EVs. All right, so moving right along here. So the Model 3 um, now starts, according to this article, at $32,740 after federal tax credits. Now remember, the magic number that we're all trying to reach here with electric vehicles is $30,000. We start getting at that level or below that, we're going to increase EV adoption rates because now we're competing heavily with ICE vehicles. So even though China has some vehicles below $30,000, so far Tesla has not been able to manage that. But 32,700 is getting really, really close here. Um, the other thing about Tesla, by the way, have you guys been watching the stock this morning? When I woke up, I think it was below 350, 250. Sorry, I got everybody excited just then. It is below 250, and now it's starting to climb. And there are, of course, now analysts coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, we're going to see 300. We're going to see,
It's 270.
270." Well,
Yeah.
then it's jumped quite a bit since I last looked at it. And you may be curious. Granted, there is a lot of good news about Tesla. This adoption of the NACS standard, a standardized charging connector using Tesla's connector is great news. But the other part of this that we have to remember is Tesla is traditionally one of the heaviest shorted stocks, in the market. And you got to feel bad for these short sellers. I mean, at some point in time with a short position, as the stock goes up, your valuation goes down proportionately. And at some point in time, they bail. And this smells like a short squeeze. This smells like a bunch of short sellers deciding, I can't take the pain anymore. I'm going to bail and get out. And in order to get out of their positions, they have to buy the stock. It sounds counterintuitive, but that's how shorting stock works. You essentially have purchased someone else's stock uh, and then hope for a delta to make up the difference later on. So this looks like a short squeeze, and maybe the analysts are right. 270, maybe this will run to 300. So it looks like we finally have some questions coming in. Thank God. I thought our audience had abandoned us. First one is Pepchin Kosteljic. We can hear you. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So the audio is working. Then we've got Niles joining us from YouTube. He's with the Bion Danish Genome Institute. He says, good morning. Test. Has Pete Gruber been cloned? I'll start with the voice if he allows me. Absolutely. I allow you. No, as I pointed out a little bit earlier, Mark currently is on a business trip. We have an insurance symposium every year that he attends, and I think he's back east somewhere. I'm not even sure where this is located, but he said that if he can, he will chime in. He's going to be in meetings, but so we won't see, or you won't see him until next week. He'll be here Friday for us. TikTok, Biagio, he says, hey, they gambled and they knew the stakes. You're absolutely right. This is just like walking in a casino. You throw down your money, and there's always that element of risk. And doesn't it seem strange that you can make money while the stock is going down? But I'll tell you an interesting story. This is probably 45 years ago when I first started trading stock. And I used to go down to Merrill Lynch here in Scottsdale. This is well before the age of the internet. We had nothing online. You had to go down and sit in a comfortable chair and watch a Quotron machine. And then they had this weird keyboard that was not QWERTY. It was alphabetic. So you had to rethink about how you're typing your stuff. But anyway, I learned how to take what's called a straddle position. And this is when you have a stock that is highly volatile. And predictably, it goes up and down and up and down. So if you take both positions at the same time, as it's going up, you then sell off your long position. As it's going down, you sell off your short position. Now, even though that sounds very simple, and you could conceivably ratchet in and out and make money going up and going down, catching the right time to do that is always a challenge because fear and greed set in and you hang in there too long or you bail too early. So for me, at least, I found that straddle positions didn't work. But so hopefully the short sellers aren't hurting too badly. Another TikTok question, Mike Factor, CBHC, is saying or asking, how much does it cost to replace an AC compressor in a 2016 Model X? You know what? I'm going to hope that the shop guys are watching the podcast. They have a 75-inch screen there. And if they are, we need you guys to text us or let us know what that current Model X that we have in the shop that's getting the AC compressor replaced, roughly what that costs. We appreciate that. Okay, so moving right along here with news items. A while ago, one of the Facebook sites, and I'm going to read it to you if it's on here. No, it's not. All right. If you want to look for this Facebook site, it's got BMS U029 in the name, and if you type that in, it'll come up. This was a site that was created for customers that are being affected by a battery failure in the Tesla Model S. And this is the error code that pops up when you have an imbalance in the bricks inside the battery. And the solution from Tesla is you've got to change your battery. Now, they do have refurbished batteries available and new batteries, and the cost is around $14,000 for the refurb, $22,000 for the brand new battery. So in this particular Facebook site, a question came up about the Model S Owner's Manual, 2012 through 2020, which is still on the website. And in this manual, it said that you need to charge your battery to 100%. And of course, that's incorrect for a lithium-ion battery because that stresses the heck out of the lithium-ion batteries. 85, maybe 90% is the preferred charge range for those. So I contacted Tesla, let them know that they had a typo in that manual, and they said, yeah, it was probably one of our people in documentation that did a cut-paste, not realizing that they were applying standards or parameters from the lithium iron phosphate battery, which is in the later Model 3s. And they said, we'll fix it. Well, that was about a month or so ago, May 9th, actually, and it's still out there. But what Tesla did tell us is that the screen in the cars, if in doubt, tells you what to charge that battery to. And since there were two versions in the Model 3, the lithium ion and lithium iron phosphate, if you try to charge and you're exceeding the rate of the capacity for that battery, it will warn you. So the firmware is synchronized with the type of battery you have in the car. So for now, at least, ignore the owner's manual. Make sure that you keep or you pay attention to your screen and what it's advising you to do if you're trying to get a charge on your battery. TikTok. Biagio says, the LFP battery is so nice to charge to 100%. I love it. You know, I usually test drive Roadsters, and we have so many of them that I'm constantly driving Roadsters. Well, anyway, yesterday I ran out of Roadsters to test drive. One of the ones I was test driving actually ended up with a problem in my garage, and we had to get it towed back to the shop. So since we were in a hurry, they said, why don't you take this loaner Model S that we have? And I get into this 100D white-on-white Roadster. In fact, Richard drove it for a while. And I'm telling you, this thing is like sitting in your living room couch. It is plush. It is luxurious. I don't think I've ever driven a Cadillac, but that's what a Cadillac would remind me of. But I charged that thing, and I woke up this morning, and I had 277 miles range, and that was at an 80% charge. So that 100 P battery definitely gives me some range. I think this is my last day for driving it, though. I'm getting used to it. I threatened the guys. I said, okay, I'm done test driving. I'm going to drive these luxurious cars from now on. He said, no, got a lot more Roadsters for you to drive.
It's really easy to get used to, Pete.
It is,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. I finally figured out the sound system, too. The thing will play all different types of music. But, I find personally, I'm not used to that 17-inch screen in the middle of the dash. And if you're sitting there at a light and you start fiddling with that screen, the light no longer feels like an eternity. It's like the next thing you know, somebody's honking at you saying, let's go,
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, quite a car, these Teslas. It looks like Niles, he's agreeing with me about the straddle position. Agreed, he says straddle don't work. I found it better to limit losses with put options, as many funds do. Good. Yeah, that's good advice, Niles. And then some more about, or he has a question, opinions about the Polyjoule batteries. Oh boy, you got me there. I don't know about that battery yet. It looks like that's another one that we're going to have to research. Polyjoule, all right? We'll look into that. Let's see here. I've got the word of the day for you guys. I sometimes see inspirational stuff on social media, and the word of the day today is euphoria. And the description here of euphoria is, in the tapestry of business and success, euphoria emerges as the radiant reward for perseverance, innovation, and unwavering belief. Are you following this so far? I like this. It is the sweet nectar that fuels our ambitions, propelling us beyond limits and unveiling the extraordinary possibilities that lie within the realm of our dreams. You know what? We should probably put an inspirational saying into each one of these podcasts. We might have some, audience that enjoy that. All right. So Tesla, it looks like, and if we can throw up a picture here, guys, if you can throw up that picture of Kairan Kwasi. This is kind of a heartwarming story. Turns out Elon SpaceX, has hired a 14-year-old. I don't know how they got around child labor laws, but I think there are provisions for, certain types of work that allow a 14-year-old to work in a facility like this. That is a picture of Kairan Kwasi. There we go. And let me tell you the backstory here. This is kind of interesting. He's going to be joining, of course, what he feels, and this is a quote from him, I will be joining the coolest company on the planet as a software engineer on the Starlink engineering team. He says, one of the rare companies that did not use my age as an arbitrary and outdated proxy for maturity and ability. Well said, Kairan. Here's the backstory on Kairan. He started his journey at age 2 when he was reportedly being able to speak in complete sentences. Now, I've had, 6 kids. I'm not sure that any of them spoke complete sentences at age 2. But anyway, that is quite a remarkable achievement. By the time that he was in kindergarten, after finding that schoolwork wasn't challenging enough in the 3rd grade, his parents helped him enroll at a community college in California at age 9. So he's going to college at age 9. And from there, he began coding. What he's hired as SpaceX is a young prodigy to join as a software engineer. He has graduated at 14 years old now from Santa Clara University in California, and he started studying computer science in earnest and engineering at the age of 11. So hats off to you, Kairan. You're an inspiration, and we hope you do well at SpaceX. And you're right, it is a wonderful company. We have a comment from a audience member. He says, his name is Try to Help You. He says, I want to say child labor laws put the age at 12 years old per his sociology class last semester. Crazy, he says, but the Department of Labor states that 14 is the minimum age with limited hours. Okay, so it's probably not a 40-hour week then. But if he's the kind of overachiever that he looks like based on his background, they're going to have a hard time kicking him out of there. When work becomes fun and challenging, it's no longer drudgery. You actually enjoy what you do, and sometimes we have to kick people out in order to get them to have a personal life.
I think the person you're talking about is you, Pete.
Yes, yeah, thank you. You caught that, right? All right. I have a Facebook contact. You know how you accumulate friends on Facebook and then you learn about them as they post things? Well, this is a Michael Allen, and he has some interesting interests. But the most interesting thing I found was he posted something last week, and he says, I have a 2015 Tesla Model S P85D with the original battery pack. Now, that in and of itself may not be a noteworthy achievement, but he goes on to say, this car has 300,000 miles on the odometer. So I guess this proves that Tesla Model S's, do have a long lifespan at times with batteries. I think there's one in Europe, and now we have to switch to kilometers. He was at 700,000 kilometers and then eventually crossed over to 1 million. But I think that he changed his battery at one point in time there. Hey, it looks like George is back with us. YouTube, watch Rich Rebuild's channel. I always give that advertisement for George. He says, good morning. He loves the background. This is the in tribute to the NACS charging standard adoption, which the world is finally beginning to standardize the charge ports. So staying with that topic for a moment, my first thought was, because we're immediately beginning to think, all right, what stock's going to pop from here? Is it going to be ABB, who makes charging systems? What will happen to EVA? What will happen to GM and Ford? And of course, it wasn't too much of a stretch to see that GM began to increase in value. Their stock began to go up. And everyone's excited about the fact that this may make their EV adoption a bit more prolific. So the other question that I had is who is making Tesla's charging stations? Did a bit of research. It turns out that Tesla is making their own charging, their own superchargers. And this particular article that I found, it says that the deal with GM and Ford means that Tesla needs to double the number of chargers. So it looks like one of their divisions is going to see a huge influx of additional business. There's also an article in TechCrunch, and the headline there is, Tesla's supercharger network will strain under the weight of the GM and Ford deals. Well, I don't know how true that is. We'll have to see. But, it's not just Ford and GM. Now that the two big incumbents have jumped into the picture in North America, we're going to see a whole lot of other EV manufacturers that aren't going to want to be left in the dust. And of course, the motivation now is, if they have a car they're trying to sell that has a proprietary charge connector where you can't really charge it at all of the locations, that's going to be a downside for them and affect their ability to sell cars. So I think what we'll see over the next month or two is a rapid adoption of this NACS charge standard with the other EV manufacturers. My bet is on Lucid. How long do you guys think it'll take for Lucid to jump on that bandwagon and say, we're going to adopt it as well?
I mean, it's hard to tell, to be honest with you. I don't know. I'm gonna guess a year and a half.
A year that long? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if anybody in the audience has some ideas or opinions on this, we'd love to hear from you. It looks like Get2222. He says GM can't afford a new plant specific for EVs. So your thinking is that maybe this announcement was to disguise the fact that there isn't enough reserve cash to build some additional plants for EVs. Well, again, as Richard just said, time will tell whether that's the case or not. YouTube, George says, I believe Tesla will be pulling data and info from GM and Ford cars with them using Tesla Superchargers. What do I think about that? Will Tesla be legally allowed to get and use their data? You know, I don't know if there is any intelligent information exchange, unlike with the Tesla vehicles and the mothership. The NACS standard gives you a pilot signal and 2 voltage signals. Other than that, I don't know of any additional layers of communication with the vehicles going across the pilot signal, for example. And even if it was, it would be proprietary to Tesla. And you're probably right. Will this cause problems? Yeah, I'm not sure that they're legally allowed to do that without the owner's permission. But, you know, that'll be an interesting thing to watch evolve. The fact that Tesla vehicles are actually nodes on the mothership network, as we call it, is just a remarkable shift from what transportation used to be like. You know, for example, if your car got stolen, the police departments would put out an all points bulletin, and then you'd have to wait for an officer to recognize your car or your license plate somewhere. Then we got plate recognition technology, and that kind of improved that. But now these cars communicate. And I can safely tell you that we have actually been involved in something like that. We had 2 lease cars that disappeared on us. They went to Atlanta, Georgia. Fortunately, the lease payments continued. When we tried to retrieve the cars, they stopped. And eventually they went into the ozone. And because we had routed those cars, we were actually able to track them, find out that one of them was sitting in a grocery store parking lot. The other one, we found where the apartment was. And armed with that information, we were actually able to legally retrieve those cars and repossess them. So things have changed. Things have changed quite a bit in terms of how smart these cars are and your ability to stay linked to them. All right, get 2222. He says, and this is his opinion, he says, Lucid isn't too proud. Musk doesn't care about Rawlinson's lies. All right,
You got to read the one above it first.
Okay. YouTube, try to help you, says, Lucid may be too proud given the history. Okay, those are interesting opinions. You know, I've not personally talked to Peter Rawlinson, but I tend to think that people at that level are far more focused on the business side of things rather than petty emotions like envy or jealousy or pride that get involved. These are basic human emotions. And most CEOs can't indulge in that level of emotion because they have an overriding charter to make the company profitable and to represent the shareholders and the owners of the vehicles. So my vote on this would be there probably isn't going to be any pride, and I would be surprised if Lucid doesn't adopt this standard within the next month or two. Looks like Niles is chiming in from Denmark. He says, what was the result of the poll about the cathode? There's a part of that question that is missing, Richard. Richard just got up, so when he gets back on there, I can read the rest of your question there, Niles. We had just to give the audience some preview on this, we had someone chime in and say, well, cathode is negative and anode is positive. And it went contrary to everything that I've always learned and been involved in. Diodes, for example, the cathode is the positive side, the anode is the negative. So what Niles is asking is, what was the result of the poll about the cathode? I learned in school that electrons flow from cathode minus toward the anode plus, but I guess they flow both ways depending on the charge. You know, when I was still involved, and that was high school, and oh my God, that was what, 40, 50 years ago? 50 years ago, yeah. I'm 71 now. I don't do the math that well. But yeah, so it was over 50 years ago. The theory at that time was no one was sure what directions electrons flow, but we had arbitrarily decided that that there was plus and minus to distinguish between the two, poles, and that the cathode was positive and the anode was negative. Now, of course, with AI chiming in, I wonder if it'll be able to figure out if there is a direction to electron flow, or maybe Niles is saying, I guess they flow both ways depending on charge. All right, Instagram, Oakshade. He says, white label Teslas. I'm not sure what he means by that.
That was from a few minutes ago. We missed it. I'm not sure what he was referring to. I think he's just saying people might start making cars and then labeling them as like white labeling
Okay.
their cars as Teslas. I'm not really 100% sure.
Yeah, feel free to expound on that, Oakshade, and we'll read it. So, continuing here with news items, we should probably talk about the North American Charge Standard and the CCS standard, which began to evolve as well, was a standard that uses two connectors, basically mated into one. And the strategy there was, unlike Tesla, other vehicles have separate charge ports for either DC or for the AC portion. My son Peter was over this weekend, and he's got one of those Kia electric vans. And he showed me the charge port door on the front of his vehicle, and he had this huge CHAdeMO connector with big pins, which was the DC portion, and then he had a J1772 standard connector next to it, which was the AC portion. Well, what Tesla decided to do some time ago was with this Trident connector, or what they then later on called the NACS standard. By the way, thank God Tesla made that switch, because their first generation charge standard was a Tesla Roadster, and this thing is the size of a Coke can, even bigger than that actually, and heavy, and certainly not as robust as the Trident connector, which came later. But with the Trident connector, what they decided to do was, let's put the determination of whether it's AC or DC in the high voltage junction box in the car, and we'll give it the capability of using either DC input or AC input, but using the same plug, and which reduces the size, of course. So it's a much more efficient design than the CCS connector. And by incorporating a latch mechanism on the vehicle's inlet port, it enabled this slimmer plug with also less dirt and intrusion potential. Remember, if you've got a gigantic plug or two separate plugs, there's a whole lot more chance for rain, water, dust, dirt, you name it. And of course, the last guy that used that charge cable may have dropped it in the mud, which also happens with the charging stations. So CCS was designed as an addition to J1772, which is only AC. And then CCS supports both AC and DC charging. Now, in J1772, the absence of DC pins was justified at the time by a presumption that plug-in hybrids were going to continue to be a part of transportation, and that they don't need DC charging, which of course proved to be incorrect, because hybrids are quickly disappearing, except for Lamborghini and GM, which are making a Corvette hybrid and a Lamborghini hybrid. And we'll have a whole session on that at some point later on. So this made the J1772 connector cheaper, but created a false economy, giving the prevalence of DC charge ports by 2023. So it does require some additional hardware in the vehicles to use the Tesla NACS connector, and Ford and GM will have to incorporate some form of signal redirection, most likely relays and contactors like Tesla does, to support the both DC and AC charging from the same port. Now, Tesla's next generation plug, also part of the NACS evolution, will support 1,000 volt charging. Now remember, in the US, the predominant DC voltage in EVs is 400 volts. Europe, some time ago, already adopted the 800 volt standard. Now, the higher the voltage gets on the AC side or even DC side, the smaller the wire size, because that's all about amperage. There is an inversely proportional relationship between voltage and amperage. As voltage doubles, amperage goes in half or decreases. So going to higher voltage will mean that the cables will get smaller. We'll be able to pump more amperage to the cars, and they're already talking about 600 amp in charge cycles, which translates to about 500 kW charging. The CCS usage between North America and Europe is different. And it's partly due to Europe's common access to three-phase power. Now, let's talk about that for a moment. In the United States, you don't have three-phase power in residential neighborhoods. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to get it run to a house. Everything that we have that runs to residential neighborhoods, which is where the majority of charging actually takes place, is split-phase, two-phase, or two phases of 120. And when you combine those two, you have 240 volts. In a commercial setting, you have three-phase power, which is a bit more efficient than single-phase or split-phase 240. And the reason is because of the phase relationship. So Europe is already a step ahead of us in the US, but they've been running three-phase to residential type homes for much longer than the United States, or instead of like the United States, which does not do that. So it looks like Europe is a bit further ahead, and it'll be interesting to see how the NACS standard, which is not yet applied in Europe, will evolve to something usable there, so that they can have something similar where you have one connector that is able to deliver both AC and DC. All right, looks like we got a bunch of questions coming in. George asks, any update about the price on the 3 Chinese cars? Unless you mentioned this earlier, I got to this show late. No, the latest news on the 3 barn-find Tesla Roadsters is that they were being transported from China, the dock there, to Dubai. And the most recent discussion that I've had with the sellers is that there's now a possibility that they will be coming directly to the United States. All of that is still up in the air, and the final bidders are still being vetted and qualified. So there is no new news, at least as of this broadcast. By Thursday, I might have more information for you about those 3 cars. Instagram, Oakshade, he says, Tesla makes cars and other companies label them. Could GM have Tesla build a car for them? Oh, absolutely. Private labeling is a very big way to conduct business. At this point, we are unaware of any EV manufacturers that are private labeling for other EV manufacturers. But it has traditionally been an elegant and less expensive way to get into a particular market. And frankly, I'm surprised that in the EV world, there isn't some of that going on. Everybody's trying to make their own electric vehicle, and everybody is going through the same design and ramp up challenges. And some of them may not make it through that. So yes, private labeling is definitely a far less risky way to bring product to market. Looks like Niles from Denmark is saying, I follow a YouTube channel named Veritasium, Veritasium. He claims electrons don't flow in wires at all. The video is called The Big Misconception About Electricity. That might illuminate the question. That is an interesting concept. You know what? When I get upstairs, I'm going to ask AI about this and see what it knows, if anything. Al Bert 1976, he says, hello from Malta. Well, thank you. It must be beautiful there this time of year. George asks, I have a crazy idea and wondered if you have an answer. Do you think I could add a second charge port on my passenger side 2014 Model S. I believe Europe has them on that side, passenger side, and I was thinking of splitting it and run it parallel and, of course, use one at a time. I thought it would it could then handle different home chargers. I'm assuming you're talking about the proximity of the where the charge port is. I can't think of any kind of charging advantage inside the vehicle because you have only one battery, you have only one high voltage junction box, and of course, replicating those two things would make the car bloated and pretty heavy. But if you have some additional ideas what the advantages of that might be, I'd certainly be interested in hearing that. All right, so we've got another news item here, and this is about NIO. NIO is one of those Chinese manufacturers that has lost a lot of valuation within the last year. I know this well because I have some of that stock. They're down to like $7, $8 or something as of today, and they were, I think, in the high 20s at one point in time. But like other Chinese EV manufacturers, oftentimes they get a lot of support from the government, who really wants that kind of technology to flourish in their country. And but NIO has hit on some hard times. They're also the company that makes the charging station or the battery swapping stations. And they have a novel design in that they build a modular system so that when they want to set up a battery swapping station somewhere, it's rapid because they crane in the entire modular station rather than going through building permits, breaking ground, bricks and mortar, all of that. Of course, there are a lot of people that challenge the validity of a battery swapping type scenario when charging stations are becoming ubiquitous and virtually everywhere these days. But one of the things that convinced NIO in China to go this direction was there is a large population of people that live in urban environments and apartments where there is no charging infrastructure. And what we learned was a Chinese cultural predisposition to always wanting the refrigerator full or having that battery charge full. It must be cultural. But anyway, NIO announced that effective June 1st, consumers who purchase the NIO ET7, EC7, ES7, and ET5 will no longer receive a free home charger. And the free battery swap entitlement will be adjusted to only 4 times per month. So they're putting some cost-cutting restrictions in place, probably because they can't afford to do what Elon does, which is whack the cost of the vehicles. Companies that have a fixed cost for that can't operate at a loss. The article goes on. It says, since the free battery swap service is directly tied to the sale of NIO vehicles, it discourages potential consumers in areas where the number of battery swap stations is small from taking an interest in NIO vehicles. They may believe that the cost of the vehicle purchase includes the battery swap service that they will not be able to enjoy in the short term. Now, staying with that topic for a moment, Tesla also stopped sending charge cables with their cars. Now, this may also have been a charge or a cost-cutting measure, but it used to be that when you bought a Tesla Model S, X, or whatever, you got a little 110 type charging system that came with a car, Trident connector on one end and a 20 amp or 15 amp AC plug on the other. Apparently, Tesla is no longer offering this. And let me see what the cutoff date on that was. It doesn't really say here. But the reason stated by Elon was that people really don't use them that much anyway. So there you have it. So I've got a question here that was posed. Can I use electric roads to charge my Tesla? Well, there are some better options in the works that we can talk about. Electrion is an Israeli startup that was founded in 2013. And it is working on building roads. They already have the technology nailed down, but putting this into roads that can wirelessly charge moving electric vehicles. A technology, they say, that could theoretically eliminate the need for lengthy pit stops or even plugging in, period. In a demonstration of the technology's potential, this startup drove an electric Toyota RAV4 Prime. It's a plug-in hybrid vehicle for 1,207 miles on a test track without ever stopping. And we're assuming they didn't have any fuel either, since it was a plug-in hybrid. Now, that's about 5 times farther than normal EVs can travel on a full charge. So it looks like this technology is being tested. And as far as implementation, they claim that in 2022, Electrion announced plans to build a mile-long stretch of this road embedded with its technology in Detroit, Michigan, that will be able to charge cars as they drive, so long as they install a special receiver. And it's expected to be functional sometime in 2023. So you have a couple of potential costly issues here. One is, if you want to convert your electric vehicle to a wireless charging method, there's going to have to be some modifications to that vehicle. There will have to be a receiver or that transmitter that's buried in the road that can capture that energy and then charge your battery. The second thing that I thought about with this technology is, I'm sure this will be pay-per-view. I can't imagine that this electricity and all of this energy that's being embedded in the systems or in these roads is free of charge. You can just simply drive across them and scavenge some energy. So there will be a couple of costly modifications that will need to be made in order to become part of this movement. But the bright spot here is once adoption is 100%, remember, we are going to, it's going to revolutionize transportation. You're not going to have to plug in anywhere anymore. And it would be even more cool if there was sufficient energy transfer that was able to take place where you wouldn't even need to store that energy. Of course, thinking about that carefully, there might be a flaw there. You've got the road, you're getting energy while you're driving or while you're on the road, but then you pull in your driveway and then what? All right, so we're going to need a small battery in there. Oh, we could push it. Yeah, that's true. All right. So we'll go low tech at that point. Love to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on this? The inductive coupled energy transfer, which of course is not new. In the AC world, we've been using that concept and that technology for well over a century. So George is asking, where's your other half today? Yeah, my co-host, Mark Schaffner. He is at an insurance symposium. Our company attends these every year, and he will be gone until Friday this week. And George is saying, I'll bet Mark is playing hooky. Well, he's probably enjoying himself. You know, these things are a combination of business and boondoggle. So have a drink for me, Mark, wherever you are. He said he would chime in. I haven't seen him yet. Have you guys seen him chime in? No. All right, we've got TikTok. Tesla Mike says, I use mine when I travel. He's talking about his charge cord or his charge cord here. Yeah, they are handy to have. Oh, here's a good one. George says, electric roads will never work here in New York with all the potholes. Good point. And the reason that they have more potholes in those four-season areas is you have all of that freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing, and they just can't get to all the potholes after every season. I know I used to live there, and there were some bone-jarring experiences in Rochester, New York, as you're driving down the road and suddenly you feel like your wheel just came off. All right, there's a company in China. All right, here's another news item. Car exports in China rose 82% to nearly 1.8 million units in the first 5 months of this year from the previous year. Can you imagine an 82% increase in electric vehicles. That's just massive. China is taking this EV adoption very seriously. And of course, with the number of people that they have there and that growing middle class, their production capacity is virtually unprecedented in the world. They already got their feet wet with technology many, many decades ago. And we look for great things from China. So that is quite a jump, 82%. All right, it looks like we may be coming to a close here. I'm running out of news items unless you guys have more questions. And we are coming up on that hour. We've got one more comment from Niles. He says, frequently and increasingly so in the future, the cost of electricity is negative. The day before yesterday, it was minus 34, that's the currency in Denmark, 5 cents in the afternoon. So free charging could happen. Good point. We'll have to carefully look to see where these free sources of electricity are coming from. Or solar is one of the most obvious places to get free energy, after, of course, all the infrastructure costs are met. George is asking any update on the Tesla factory in Spain. At this point, it's just a news item across the wire, not much details, size. I think earlier we had a cost projection for this factory, and it was around $4 billion. Let's see if I can bring that back up. What is just remarkable is that Tesla seems to be on a tear, creating gigafactories unlike any other car manufacturers in the world. That might be why the stock's going crazy. You know what? I can't find it here, but I think it was around $4 to $5 billion for this factory in Spain. And that's right on the heels of Shanghai, then the announcement in Mexico, they're building another one. Well, actually, Shanghai, Berlin, Mexico, and I'm leaving one out here. I'm losing track of them. Mexico, India. That's right. Elon went to India, is talking to them about a gigafactory there. And suddenly, a couple weeks later, we're talking to Spain about a factory there. You know, that would be great because Europe is a huge market, and having 2 gigafactories in Europe would definitely be a huge benefit. And then Asia, you've got India and Shanghai now. So it looks like Tesla is picking their factory locations carefully and strategically. All right, I think we're coming up to an hour here. Do you guys have anything that we need to talk about before we wrap?
No, we can wrap. It's over an hour. We're an hour and 6 minutes.
Okay. Appreciate everyone joining us. Tomorrow we've got the Tesla Roadster podcast. Again, just because you don't have a Roadster doesn't mean you can't join us. Thursday, it'll be the same EV podcast that we did today with news items, questions, all of that. And Friday, we're actually doing one for Gruber Power Services, which is one of our other sister divisions. And Jesse, should we tell them about our AI podcast Sunday? What do you think? I just did. All right. You know, we were theorizing Friday, late Friday, I think it was, about we're both into AI. We love the concept. We are intrigued by the possibilities. We are excited about what could happen. And it looks like the rest of the world doesn't share quite that much enthusiasm about AI. There's a lot of fear, trepidation about the impact and the dangers and all of that. So we decided to come in Sunday, and both of us have off, you know, the weekends. And although I was here working over at GMC Sunday morning, I said, all right, I'll meet you here at 10 o'clock. I'll bring the donuts. I'm not going to be shaved, but let's do an AI podcast and see who shows up. And what did we have, like 800 people or something like that? Yeah, across all the platforms that we were doing. It's a great, and we'll probably do it again this Sunday. It's a great place to philosophize, exchange ideas, expose some fears. And anyway, if you'd like to join us, 10 o'clock-ish. We actually got started at 10:30 that day. But if you'd like to join us, we'll be doing an AI podcast, and maybe this thing will grow legs, and we'll continue that as well. So in the meantime, again, thank you for joining us. I'm Pete Gruber signing off. We'll see you Thursday or tomorrow. Thank you.